I do not have a prim and proper little hook for today's video, something to pique the interest, really, something to comment on Emily Dickinson or the themes of the poem, maybe both. Why? Because this is my favorite poem of all time. This is a poem that will tongue tie me, and there are some things in this poem. Look, I could talk about this poem every day in a video for an entire month, and there have been times where I've been tempted to do so and never run out of things to say and never exhaust the poem completely. But there's one thing that I want to focus on today that I think is wisdom, the way that wisdom is passed down to us in literature. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will take place, of course, in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one, the poetry discussion playlist, and number two, the Emily Dickinson playlist on the channel, a playlist of videos dedicated exclusively to the greatest poet of all time, Emily Dickinson. And if you have a different opinion, that's fine. You're allowed to be wrong. Emily Dickinson's I Died for Beauty is, in my opinion, the greatest poem of all time, my favorite poem of all time, and it reads as such. I died for beauty, but was scarce adjusted in the tomb, when one who died for truth was lain in an adjoining room. He questioned softly why I failed. For beauty, I replied, and I, for truth themself are one. We brethren are, he said, and so, as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names. So essentially, what we have here is someone identifying themselves as beauty, how humble, has died. Someone identifying themselves as truth has died. Now, they don't literally say, I am beauty, I am truth, but that's something in their life for which they were willing to die. They are essentially these things embodied at this point. After they have this conversation about themselves, they realize that truth and beauty themselves are one. Truth and beauty are the same thing. And so, as kinsmen, as if we were related, we talked between the rooms until the moss had reached our lips. Once that moss reaches our lips, we stopped talking. The moss had grown over our lips. Words were no longer necessary. And in the somber silence between truth and beauty, anonymity is achieved. It no longer matters who you are, and covered up our names. The moss had reached our lips and covered up our names. It does not matter who you were. What you are is beauty. What you are is truth. Now, there is a very obvious question here. Where are these people? Where are these two? Where are they speaking to each other from? They're both dead. It would seem, then, that they are speaking to each other from a mausoleum. They are scarce adjusted in the tomb. They are not awaiting burial. They have been buried. They've been buried in the same building. They have been taken to, after their death, the same mausoleum. It would seem that to the living, these two are kinsmen to begin with. mausoleums are owned by families. I'm sure there are exceptions, but you have a mausoleum. You have one of these buildings in which to inter your dead because all of those dead should be together in the afterlife. This is a family thing. Meaning that prior to this conversation, prior to Beauty and Truth having this wonderful discussion and deciding that they are the same and that no longer were words necessary and in fact no longer were names necessary. Prior to that, everyone amongst the living already knew that Beauty and Truth were related, that Beauty and Truth were perhaps the same thing, the very same thing. Everyone knew that. Except for Beauty and for Truth. Now, after death, what does this imply? That it is not until after death that Beauty and Truth realize they're the same thing. What is death? Death is realization. The full capacity of the person is realized upon death. You will do no more. What it is that you were is done. We can write that book now. We can write the book of who this person was who identifies as Beauty. We can write the book as to who this person was that identifies as Truth. They are fully encapsulated in what it means to be them. They are defined. They have definitions, the way that words carry definitions. So, it is not until they have definitions that they realize, oh, we're the same thing. However, everyone else already knew this. Everyone knew that truth and beauty were the same thing except for truth and beauty until they had been defined, and then they realized, oh, well, this is the same thing. What does this mean, truth and beauty to be the same thing? That which is true is beautiful because it is authentic. I think that's essentially what the argument is here. What is authentic, what is true, is definitionally beautiful. What is beautiful, we don't know why we are attracted to beautiful people. It's not the proportions of their face. We don't know why we are attracted to beautiful paintings. You can't pull out a ruler and understand why. We don't know why there are ideas which wriggle in the back of our minds, but they do. We find them beautiful. We find them impossible to look away from. These things, beautiful in their own way, they are to us a truth. Might not quite be definitional, like 1 + 1 = 2 type of truth, but we know it when we see it. Here's another. So, one of the big unsaid points in this poem is that truth and beauty were always the same thing, whether they had this conversation or not. In fact, it was everyone else who already knew that was real, that was true, that was beautiful. Here's another thing that is not said in this poem, but is extremely intriguing when taking it at face value. The moss reaching their lips. This is emblematic of the passage of time. Meaning, Because the moss reached their lips and covered up their names at the same time, beauty was there not long before the other person was brought in. Is it possible that this is our poet, Emily Dickinson, telling us that whatever it is that kills truth in this world will be the same thing that kills beauty? Would it be that the inauthentic is what it is that kills both truth and beauty? Because it rids either of them. The inauthentic gaining power. Something which is not authentic, informing other people. These are things that disallow the beautiful. These are things that disallow the true. And once we lose those things, once we lose either beauty or truth, once we lose the authentic, everything is done for. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to. Share this video with other literature lovers if you find yourself here by chance but not design. Literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.